Okay. I got it.
Good. Fantastic. Hey, everyone, and welcome to Chef AJ Live. I'm your host, Chef AJ, and this is where I introduce you to amazing people like you who are doing great things in the world that I think you should know about. Well, today is a very special show because it's the birthday of my guest, Dr. Bill Dysinger, who's going to be joined by his son, Dr. Wayne Dysinger. Dr. Wayne Dysinger has been on the show many times before. He's an amazing plant-based physician, lifestyle medicine doctor who was my personal physician when I lived in the desert, but then I moved up north and I got a different one, Dr. Neil Nedley. So I'm keeping it all in the family, thank goodness. Well, if you watch my show regularly, you remember that I had on a physician last year named Dr. John Scharfenberg after his 99th birthday. And somehow we started talking about the Dysingers, and I heard about a gentleman named Dr. Bill Dysinger, the father of Dr. Wayne Dysinger, who was going to turn 96. And I figured if I can get the most views on a show for a guy that's 99, let's have another physician that's 96 because, you know, people really want to know not just how to age, but how to age well. And I think we can learn a lot from our examples like Dr. Bill Dysinger. But to introduce him, let's first welcome his son, Dr. Wayne Dysinger. Nice to see you. Is this why you're a doctor? Because your dad's a doctor?
I'm sure I'm heavily influenced by my dad in a lot of different ways. So yes.
Well, you guys are in two different cities, so you're not celebrating together.
That's correct. I'm in California and my dad's in Tennessee. But I do get a chance to go out there in about 10 days, and we're going to celebrate not only his 96th birthday, but his 65th wedding anniversary.
Wow.
So he and my mom have been married for 65 years now.
That is pretty incredible. Well, I can't wait till you introduce him and we learn the secrets because, you know, it's not just about living long, it's about aging well and living well. And that's, you know, because, you know, we have medicines and procedures now that can prolong long life, but not necessarily quality of life.
Yeah, I mean, and I tell you, I'm 62 now. The older you get, the more you realize how it's not easy. Aging is not an easy journey. Yeah. And so then to see someone like my dad, who's 96 and with a very good quality of life, or Dr. Scharfenberg, or, you know, any number of other people who have been blessed, but also it's not just a blessing, it's also a set of personal choices.
Right. Yeah. Because I mean, genetics, of course, plays a role, but I think there's a lot more to it than people realize. And my mom used to say, getting old is not for sissies.
Yeah. Yeah.
Your dad looks adorable. Well, so go ahead, introduce him, or however you want to do this. This is your show.
Yeah. So I'm gonna just share a few slides, and full screen here. So you know, I just, for me, it's super fun to be on your show, AJ. Thank you so much for bringing my dad on and for allowing me to join him on his birthday. So literally today is the day he's turning 96. And, you know, interestingly, he was born in rural Tennessee. In fact, we joke that the place that the actual structure that he was born in became a pigsty. I
was born in a pigsty.
Yeah. So, but now he's retired in a farm not too far from there. But I just wanted to share a little bit about his life story. So, you know, he was born there in Tennessee, ended up going to medical school out here in California at Loma Linda University, and went from there to getting a master's in public health at Harvard School of Public Health. He was one of the founding academic deans he was the founding academic dean for the Loma Linda University School of Public Health. So he taught at Loma Linda University through the larger portion of his career, both in the medical school and the School of Public Health. And his position there was professor of international health. And he's still connected to Loma Linda, but actually, what time did you leave Loma Linda, Dad? I guess it was in the 1980s. You primarily left Loma Linda. And then you can see his international health work literally took him around the world. He's literally done health projects in 55 countries or in 60 countries around the world, and lived in 5 different countries in multiple different continents. Throughout his career. He's been married to my mom for 65 years, 4 children, 17 grandchildren, 13 great-grandchildren, and more on the way, more popping out every few months, it seems like these days. We already talked about being raised in rural Tennessee. My dad continues to walk regularly. He told me earlier this week he was out and did 2 miles in, what was it, 56 minutes?
54 minutes.
Like 54 minutes, Dad. He's a member of Planet Fitness and goes to the gym regularly and does strength training there. He still works around the farm, gets on his tractor, goes out and does bush hogging. He skydives regularly. He celebrated his 95th, say regularly, he's done it a few times. He celebrated his 95th birthday by jumping out of an airplane. And he still stays involved in community events around the rural Tennessee neighborhoods that he lives in. He's been whole food plant-based his whole life, vegetarian and primarily vegan, not 100% vegan. So that's the quick.
Not too late. Not too late.
Quick introduction that I am so thrilled to give for my dad. So, Dad, welcome. And
well, thank you.
Did you want to take the slides down?
I can take the slides down. I have some pictures that my dad took on some of his trips. So my dad was, to a large extent, a professor of international health, and much of what he did was nutrition based. So he can tell stories and all kinds of interactions around nutrition from an international perspective and from a community-based perspective.
Now, I did I hear you right? Skydiving. When was the last time you skydove?
Last year for my birthday.
Oh my gosh! And so if that's the secret to longevity, you may as well kill me now. That sounds so terribly scary and dangerous.
Well, I'm a private pilot. I used to be active. But I've been many times in the air and wondering what it would be to jump out of the airplane. But I married, and my wife nixed the idea until my 85th birthday. I finally did my skydive.
And you weren't terrified?
Well, yes, it's a thrill.
I can't believe it. I mean, that is incredible to me that you actually did it and then did it again.
Well, I've thought I might do it again on my 100th birthday.
Well, yeah, you can do it on your 100th birthday. You come back here also on your 100th birthday to tell us what that's like. So I guess there's no age limit for skydiving.
No, there isn't. As far as I know, the oldest skydiver was a lady in Australia that jumped at 102 years of age.
That is something. Hey, so did you live in the Blue Zones most of your life?
Yes, I lived in the Loma Linda area for 28 years at least.
So were you in the Blue Zones before it was even acknowledged to be a Blue Zone?
Yes, long before.
And did you play any part in that?
Well, I was in on, there have been many studies done of Seventh-day Adventists. And I was involved in the first study as a researcher studying lung function of Adventists compared to the general population.
Wow. So when you say you were involved with the study, what was the study? How did they find the people and who did the study?
Well, it was I can't remember names as well as I used to, but it was brought about by somebody who began to recognize that Adventists did not smoke and drink and seemed to live a longer life. And so he initiated or encouraged at least the first study that was sponsored by the American Cancer Society, comparing Adventists with non-Adventists. And of course, quickly non-smoking showed up as a major difference.
Yeah. Do you think that if the research was started today, that any of the blue zones, including Loma Linda, would be a blue zone?
Well, the definition I have of a blue zone is one where the population lives longer than average. And I think there's 5 or 6 blue zones recognized in the world, of which Loma Linda and Adventist. Loma Linda is at least half Adventist. That is one of the blue zones and the only one in North America.
Yeah. And you know, what I love about it, it's the only one that doesn't tout drinking wine is one of the reasons.
Okay, that's interesting.
Well, you know, because the other blue zones, they do drink alcohol and they say, oh yeah, you know, they drink, because isn't my understanding that most Adventists don't drink alcohol?
That is correct. Yes.
Yeah. So do you think it's the exclusion of all the toxic things that Adventists don't do, which is generally alcohol, tobacco, meat, even caffeine for many of them, and chocolate, or the inclusion of all the good stuff, or maybe a combination?
Well, it's probably a combination, but there's no question that the things we don't do help improve our life.
Well, I agree with that, because Dr. Scharfenberg says there's no safe amount of alcohol, but yet we have all these plant-based physicians that, you know, tout the benefits of caffeine and alcohol and olive oil and all this stuff. And it's like, really? See, you're living proof that abstinence works.
Well, I don't feel that I've suffered from my abstinence.
Yeah, you seem like you have a great life. When did you realize that nutrition was going to be a big part of your career?
Well, that's interesting. I didn't start school till I was 8 years old. And I started with a homeschool where I took 3 grades in my first year. And my first serious book that my parents gave me was this book. I don't know. I guess but it's called Ministry of Healing. And I wrote my childish
The book by Ellen White?
Yes.
I was just told by my Adventist doctor to read that book, particularly it was either chapter 15 or 16.
Well, I would highly recommend it. But at any rate, that's my first serious book. And it's been a must book for me to keep up with ever since. This was, as I say, when I was 8 years old.
That's incredible. I wonder if it comes on Audible now, because I'm kind of lazy.
Yes, I'm sure it is. There's
Right.
audioverse.com, I guess it is.
Nice.
Has, I think, all the Ellen G. White books.
That is great. Did you always want to be a doctor?
I consider that it was probably 12 years of age when I decided that's what I wanted to be.
And what kind of doctor were you? Which type of family practice, internal medicine?
I certainly started in family practice, but my overseas experience led me into public health and preventive medicine.
Preventative. It doesn't seem like we're doing very good in preventative medicine anymore, are we? We're mostly fixing things after they happen.
Yeah, well, I'm happily surprised how much diet and exercise has changed in my recent years.
tell us about it. Like, tell us what you grew up eating and what you're eating now. Because one of the first questions that came in was, what does he eat? What does he eat? Everybody wants to know what you eat all day, what you do for exercise, so people can look and feel as good as you and age as well as you.
Well, I would point out that now my wife and I do eat 2 meals a day.
Are they breakfast and lunch?
They're breakfast and
Oh
lunch.
my God, you guys are killing me with this. I go to an Adventist doctor and she's like, I do 2 meals too, but I do lunch and dinner. She goes, no, it's like, tell me, is that really the secret? Because that Dr. Scharfenberg said the same thing. I have no trouble doing 2 meals a day, but dinner's like the second most fun meal after lunch. It's when everybody's together. Like, if you're not eating at night, what the heck do you do? Tell me about it.
Well, we don't eat at the usual times. We eat breakfast usually about 8:30 or 9, and then we eat lunch about 2 or 2:30.
That's not as bad then, because that's not like eating lunch at 12 and then okay. So does your wife do all the cooking?
I do all the cooking now practically.
Really? So tell me what you think.
I wasn't trained as a cook, and I don't claim to be a chef. But well, for breakfast this morning, we had 7-grain cereal, and I used soy milk on my cereal, and I like to put grape nuts on my cereal. I eat 6 mornings a week. We have hot cereal on Sabbath or Saturday morning. We have cold cereal, and I have grape nuts and wheat checks and Cheerios and this type of thing. So that's the only day I don't cook. And Sunday, we usually have waffles with fruit on them, but we have lots of fruit. I eat a lot of pineapple on whole wheat bread with peanut butter.
Oh, peanut butter. Wow. You living dangerously there, huh?
But we commonly have 3 or 4 fruits every morning for breakfast.
And so many people, there's such misinformation out there. I'm sure you know about fruit and diabetes, and fruit is maligned. I mean, there's even a couple of plant-based doctors that say it caused cancer. So it's nice to know that fruit is healthy and that you're eating it and enjoying it. It sounds like you eat a lot like Dr. Scharfenberg. He loves his waffles. But he doesn't have a wife anymore to make them. So we try to have him over here and make him waffles because he loves them. And then, we make them for him, and then he can freeze them and pull them out. So that's your breakfast around 8 or 9. And I'm guessing no coffee, maybe water, tea.
No. My wife drinks some tea, but I don't drink with my meals.
Yeah, I don't either. That's interesting. I just never did that. So you're married 65 years this year. That's amazing.
May 11 was our anniversary.
It's so great. My grandparents were married 63 years, and my grandfather used to say, I've been in love with the same woman. Every year he would say, I've been in love with the same woman for 60 odd years. And if my wife ever found out, she'd kill me. That was a joke, by the way, but that's very cool. Are you going to have a big party for your 65th wedding anniversary?
Yes. Our son's coming back in first week of June. We're going to celebrate our wedding anniversary as well as my birthday.
Over your right shoulder, there's somebody that looks like they're gardening. Is that your wife?
No, I think it's one of my grandchildren.
That's something I was going to say, because that's why you guys look so good.
No, we're getting high-speed internet upstairs. They're just installing it.
That's great.
That's not regular work on the farm.
What do you think of all the changes in the world, especially when it comes to things like technology? Are you a fan of them, or you wish things would slow down and get back to the pace it was before?
I used to somewhat keep up with the technology, but it's gotten beyond me now.
Did you go to medical school at Loma Linda?
I did.
Nice.
Graduated in 1955.
Wow. And what kind of practice did you have?
Well, I began with general practice, Actually, I began in government service. I had been deferred for my education during the early draft years. So when I finished medicine, I was very draft eligible. And I chose to go into U.S. Public Health Service working with the Native Americans. I spent 1 year with the Blackfeet Indians in Montana and 1 year with the Navajos in Arizona. It was a general practice. I'm sorry.
I guess somebody's banging. Do they know? Who's doing that? That's okay.
They're putting the
Oh, they're putting your internet in. That's what they're doing. Okay, all right.
putting them in underground, the wires.
So you work with these American Indians?
Yes, I spent 2 years with the Native Americans, which was excellent general practice. Although my second year, I was officially the public health officer for my first year. I was officially the public health officer for the Blackfeet Indians. They are up on the northern boundary of the U.S. boundary between Canada and, well, the Blackfeet are on both sides. But
what was their diet like? Do you remember?
Well, what I remember is their alcohol use. They ate a sad American diet, but they voted the year before I came in. The Native Americans became more independent within the U.S., and they made the decision whether their reservation would be wet or dry. And the Blackfeet chose theirs to be wet, and they had a state-owned liquor shop that sold more liquor than any other liquor store in Montana. And the weekends when they got their monthly allotment, it was terrible.
Wow.
I had to sign the death certificate for too many people who died of alcohol.
Well, people they think it's benign. It's not. I have not seen lives really improved by the use of alcohol. Have either of you?
No, and the worst I ever saw was there where a young couple, came into money. They sold some land or something, and they actually bought a truck filled with wine and parked it at their house and drank themselves to death within 1 year. That was the worst case. I had to sign the death certificates for both of them, but that was within 1 year. They never drove the truck. They just parked it beside the house. And I'm told that you couldn't walk without stepping on wine bottles.
Wow. What year were you born? 1927. Wow. That's amazing. You did something with the State Department in Cambodia. Can you tell us about it?
Yes. I tried to get an overseas assignment before I went in with the Native Americans, but there were no openings at that time. And the lady that was the recruiter for the State Department became a friend of mine. And as I was finishing, or as I was entering at least the second year of a 2-year contract with Public Health Service, she called me, and I had shown a special interest in Nepal, and there were no openings at that time. So she called me and said, there is the opening coming up in Nepal, and if you are still interested, that can be your position. And I said, fine, that's what I would really like. That came up, I suppose, in December. And I married, well, I became engaged in that December. But at any rate, she called me and said, we'll send you a ticket if you can come, and we'll finalize the plans. Just before she came, my wife was living in the DC area, so I had more than one reason my wife to be was there, and I had more reasons than one to go back. But at any rate, the day before I was to fly back, the lady recruiter called and said, that position is not going to be continued. But if you will consider any other position, come on back. So I did go back, and I heard of Cambodia because a short-tail relative had just gone out to Cambodia as a missionary. And we spent that weekend reading letters from them. They'd been there for a year and they had a big stack of letters. And then I went down on Monday to talk to them, and they said, well, there's a position open in Afghanistan. And she said, it looks like there's a position opening in Cambodia. And I about fell through the floor. But to shorten the story, I did get signed up with the State Department that weekend to go to Cambodia.
Nice. How many times have you been around the world, and how many countries have you been in?
Well, at least a dozen times I've been around the world. I've been in more than 120 countries, but I've actually worked in more than 60.
What did you do in all those different countries?
It was a great deal of mother and child health work, making certain immunization. For instance, when we first lived in Tanzania, when Wayne turned 3, I guess, measles was the commonest cause of death in Tanzania. And we were involved in immunization programs that turned it around, so deaths just plummeted from measles. But malnutrition was common, and infectious diseases. I got to see smallpox in those early days. But it was mostly mother and child health, weighing babies, checking their arm circumference, making sure they were immunized, seeking to improve their sanitation and nutrition.
What was your favorite country that you visited?
My commonest rejoinder to that is I can tell you the one I least wanted to go to. I enjoyed all of them, but the one I least wanted to go to was Pakistan, because I was acquainted there and I knew many of the problems, and I didn't want to go. But I finally felt the Lord was leading me there, and so we went. And I've never enjoyed any place more than Pakistan.
That's interesting. Was it easy for you to get the kind of food you were used to eating, like plant-based diets, in all the different countries you visited?
I would say so.
Nice.
The country that I had the most difficulty was Japan. We lived in, I mean, we stayed for a week in a Japanese inn where nobody spoke English. And to get the food I wanted was a bit difficult there.
Oh, because of the language barrier, not because they didn't have like rice and veggies, right?
Right.
Nice. So Susanna, who's watching live, wonders, when you graduate, you said you graduated medical school, I believe 1955 from Loma Linda. At that time, did you get a significant amount of education in nutrition, or were they even teaching it then? Not that they teach it now.
There was some teaching, but no, I did not yet. My nutrition education formally came through my MPH at Harvard.
Yeah, talk about that, because you know, you already have an MD and you went on to get the MPH. What did that entail learning? Because not a lot of people have that. I know, isn't that what Dr. Walt Willett has, an MPH also from Harvard? That's a big deal. So tell us about that.
Well, I had leanings towards public health, even in medical school, but it wasn't until in my second year of working for the State Department. By that time, I had visited many physicians overseas, and almost unanimously, they expressed that they were disappointed that they weren't able to do more to prevent disease. They were just involved in clinical medicine as it's practiced everywhere. But I made the decision, having visited in many, many mission clinics and other places, that I did want to go into public health because I felt I had opportunity to change the world that I lived in more through that than anything else. And my local embassy thought that was a good idea, and they approved my applying. And the only School of Public Health I knew of was at Harvard, and so I applied there and was accepted.
How long was the program?
It's 1 year.
And did you go there to study it?
Yes, but there was a bit of a complication because I was accepted into Harvard, but the school started a couple of weeks before my contract with the State Department ended. And my embassy didn't think that would be a problem, that my replacement had already been planned for, and but it had to be approved in Washington, the State Department, and they disapproved it. I mean, they wouldn't allow me out 2 weeks early. That was before the days of jets, so it was 2 weeks plus travel time. They wouldn't allow me in. So I had felt like the Lord was wanting me to go into public health, but I didn't know what this was telling me. Was this telling me I shouldn't go into public health or what? But I began counseling with people, all of whom were in public health and felt that was the degree to go for, the MPH. But Loma Linda, I had graduated 5 years before, but a professor there said, I believe you should go into your MPH, but if you're having to wait a year, we could use you here. And so that's where I got into the Adventist health study as it was just getting started in 1960, 61.
Wow, that's when I was born. That's amazing. Dr. Wayne Dysinger, why hasn't this great man been honored yet from the American College of Lifestyle Medicine, along with Dr. Scharfenberg? What's up with that?
Well, It's actually a great question. I mean, we've had Dr. Wareham on. He was honored by the American College of Lifestyle Medicine a few years back when he had passed 100 at that point.
So we have to wait for your dad and Scharfenberg.
I guess it's that you have to hit 100. That's when you get on.
All right, so I want to, because I'll come to that ceremony. Dr. Bill Dysinger, do you know, healthy by choice or healthy by chance? You know, I'm curious what your family genetics are like. Did you have brothers and sisters and parents, and how long and how well did they live?
My dad died of an accident. He was on a tractor after his retirement. He was 72, if I remember correctly. He was out bush hogging beside a road and didn't see a culvert there, and the tractor rolled over on him. And as a result, he died of an accident. My mother lived to 83 or so. But my sister and her husband are more than 100. My wife's more than 100.
Wow.
More than 90, Dad.
Yeah. Oh, you don't make her any older than she is. She won't like to hear that.
Correct. That's 90.
Oh my God, that's incredible. Do you have
My
siblings?
sister is 18 months younger than I am.
Is she in good health too?
Yes, except for her back. She has a bad back.
Wow. Other than the fact that your parents died, when they died, were they in fairly good health their whole lives?
Yes and no. My dad was a workaholic, and he didn't allow himself to enjoy life.
Now, you went to Africa, and did you ever meet Dr. Dennis Burkitt, and where did you learn about the importance of fiber?
Yes, I became quite well acquainted with Dr. Burkitt, and certainly his lectures were impressive towards that. Yes, I knew him quite well.
What was he like?
He was a good, lively man. Did you ever see his lecture slides?
I've seen some of his presentations through Dr. McDougall, and I love his quote, "If you pass small stools, you need large hospitals."
Yes, I appreciated him a lot.
Yeah.
But he specialized in showing unhealthy stools and healthy stools.
Do you happen to know, was he plant-based himself, or did he not talk about that?
He was mostly plant-based.
That's so interesting. Tell us the story of Biafra.
Well, that was the worst experience of my life. Biafra is in southeast Nigeria, and they chose to become independent. And that began a civil war, which lasted for 6 or 7 years, I suppose. The picture that you're seeing was the team that was there when I was there. There was 2 nurses, a surgeon, a lab tech, and I'm in back. I was chief of the party, but this says International Red Cross, no firearms. We were supported completely by the Red Cross, but the hospital had been operated by Adventists from the time it was built. This just shows the war situation, the hospital in the background, and the trenches handy so we could jump into them if it was bombed, and it was bombed, but none hit on the campus. They hit just off the campus. The malnutrition. I was very thin when I went out, but 6 weeks there, I lost more than 20 pounds. I was skin and bones.
Wow. Oh
It
my
was just
God.
because my working conditions and the patients just took my appetite away.
Oh my God.
There were both adults and children, babies,
Ugh,
were were starving to death.
that is so sad. I'm so sorry.
And the takeaway from that for me was this shows the reddish hair. This is one of the signs of malnutrition. But we fed like 300 malnourished children, and we saw 3 meals a week turn malnutrition around. Incidentally, this shows the economy. Those are little small handfuls of salt, which sold at that time for $25. I lived in a house that was completely furnished by the sale of 1 sack of salt, 1 40-pound sack of salt. Bought the kitchen with the refrigerator and a stove and washing machine and the living room furniture. Well, the whole house was furnished by the sale of 1 sack of salt. That's where I lived for 6 weeks.
Did you ever think about writing a book about all these experiences?
This is what I wanted to illustrate. 3 meals a day beyond the starvation diet that they were on stopped the kwashiorkor. And they were mostly plant-based foods. Mostly corn soya was the food. They would get 1 bowl 3 times a week. This is showing the feeding. But it would stop the kwashiorkor, turn around severe malnutrition. That was astonishing to me.
That's incredible. So, what did you teach in regards to the healthy nutrition movement when you were doing all your world travels?
Well, I certainly promoted plant-based diet and whole food plant-based diet everywhere. But I have always been recognizing that it's not easy for many people to turn around. And so I just stated that the more plant-based foods you can eat, the better. I can't expect you to stop your animal foods completely easily.
Why is that though? I mean,
People love their animal foods.
but do they really? Because I mean, nobody I know eats raw chicken, raw beef. I mean, other than a wild animal, isn't it all the stuff they do to it, the deep frying, the sugar, the fat and salt? I mean, do people really like animal products that much? What do you think, Dr. Wayne Dysinger? What do you find in your practice? I mean, I know people can't give up dairy, but is meat really that much of a preference and addiction for people?
Well, I mean, I'm thinking through my dad's career, and a good chunk of my dad's career was the issue was not enough food. I mean, that was our planetary issue, was not enough food. Now the planetary issue is at some level too much food, right? And it's these food-like substances, these things that are marketed as food, that are, it's the sugars and the oils and the flours and all these other things that are the issue. And I personally feel like, I mean, I'm a proponent of eat food, not too much, mostly plants, and the eat food is the most important one. We got to eat whole foods. We got to get back to Dr. Dennis Burkitt talked about, and what, back to those traditional African diets that were whole food and primarily plant-based. And I do feel like some of the biggest issues with animal products is the processing of them. Cheese is an awful thing, and a lot of that is because of how highly processed it is. So even though it doesn't make sense to me to use, for instance, dairy products. What other species drinks the milk of the infant of a different species? That's
None.
Weird.
That is the most
weird.
bizarre. I agree. It's completely bizarre.
Yeah. So that doesn't make sense. So I'm a fan of veganism. But I do feel like the biggest challenge is not plant-based versus animal-based. The biggest challenge is processed versus unprocessed.
Yeah, because everybody would do better without the processed food. I agree. That's why I wrote a book called Unprocessed. Did you ever think of practicing with your dad, Dysinger and Dysinger?
Not really, I guess.
Yeah, well, interestingly, my dad was mainly public health. So when I was growing up, my dad didn't have a clinic. Well, he would go do some consulting in clinics, but he didn't have a clinic office that I would go visit him. When I visited him, I was visiting him in his academic office in the School of Public Health at Loma Linda. And then later on, my dad did more clinical work at the Veterans Hospital at Loma Linda. He helped start several programs there. But he was always more sort of in this public health world. And then when I started my journey, I clearly admired my dad. And back in those early days, when you're young, you sort of like to try to create your own thing. But I clearly, looking back, I clearly followed my dad's footsteps in a lot of different ways. But I knew in medical school, I knew I really enjoyed the patient care part. So I very consciously got trained in family medicine first. But I always had this interest in the public health preventive medicine world as well. And I got into academia, but it was when, for my journey, it was when I realized that one of the biggest challenges that our healthcare system has is doctors not having the ability to practice lifestyle medicine, practice the way that really helps patients, really gets to root causes. There weren't models out there for that. So that was sort of what I felt like my calling was to try to help show that you could practice this new way where we focus on whole food, plant-based eating, and where we focus on relationships and really getting to know patients and getting them off of medications and all those kind of things. And so it's all sort of a legacy of my dad and some of the things my dad taught me. But I didn't go to his clinical office and learn from him in that clinical way. It was more the public health, the big picture looking, and it's interesting to me, earlier in the interview, my dad said, I felt like public health was how I could transform the world or something like that. Yeah, is that what you said? And
towards that, at least.
Right. And it feels to me like as life has evolved, now 30, 40 years after that, or 50, 60 years after that, it feels like the way to transform the world now is more through lifestyle medicine, because people like my dad have actually helped solve some of the malnutrition issues and some of the lack of food issues. Now it's quality of food and almost too much food is the challenge more.
Dr. Bill Dysinger, you retired like 30 years ago. So what have you been doing all this time?
I continued with projects overseas. I actually spent a year in Yemen after my retirement, serving as the acting director of a humanitarian program there. ADRA is the Adventist Development and Relief Agency. And they had programs in Yemen, and I agreed to be a volunteer country director for a year, thinking that would be a nice little vacation. But I've never worked harder anytime. We had many projects, and we were actually being offered the work of overseeing projects more than we could do. But I've written a couple of or 3 books since I retired.
Wait,
I've
you've
got,
written books? I did not know this. We need to get that in the show notes. Can we get these books and read these books?
well, this book is not available now. Well, it's available secondhand. Heaven's Lifestyle Today was a reference book for ministers, which gave an overall view of health. And then history has always been an interest of mine. Where's the other book? Oh, here it is. This is Health to the People, which is the history of public health at Loma Linda.
So neither of these books are available anywhere?
This book is available through Amazon. And
We'll have to get a link to that. Fascinating. You need to just write a book about your life.
well, there's a little bit about it in here, but not very much.
I think it's time. So, I'm sure you're familiar with the pillars of lifestyle medicine. How do you practice those in your life? Like, for example, exercise, connections, community, sleep, stress management. Are those important to you, or is it just the diet?
Yes, they are important. I'm particularly committed. Well, I consider diet the most important, but I'm committed to keeping exercising. And so I've joined our local gym, which is 20 miles away. And I do walking and keep myself active. Stress, I do feel it's important, and I suppose my religion is the greatest help in taking care of my stress. I sleep pretty well, but I have urological problems that get me up at night quite a bit. So
that seems to be a lot of people, just even anybody over 50, I hear they're up all night peeing,
Yeah.
Things like that.
So those are some of the main things. I do find it important to socialize, and I socialize with my wife. And
do you have friends your age or younger or older?
Not very many older.
That's the advice I get from a lot of people. Make younger friends.
Yeah.
What do you do for fun?
Well,
do you have any hobbies? Do you read books? Do you watch TV? Do you do any crafts, play any musical instruments? What do you do for fun?
I have too many hobbies that I can't keep up with. I've collected stamps through a great deal of my life, but I'm not active in it now. I suppose reading and watching the news are the major activities. I still love to travel.
Wow.
And I do that. I come out to Loma Linda at least once a year. But I don't travel internationally so much. Incidentally, I grew up from the age of 12 planning to be a missionary doctor to Peru. And I discovered that my plans are not always God's plans. I lived my life working in Asia and Africa and Latin America without getting to Peru until 5 years ago. Wayne was lecturing in Lima, and he invited me to come with him. And after a lifetime of service elsewhere, I finally spent a week in Lima, Peru.
Nice. Is there anywhere you haven't been that you still want to go?
I do have places I would like to go to. I've been in the Middle East quite a bit, and actually, of course, lived there in Yemen. I was appointed dean of the American, what was it called? The American University in Lebanon. I was appointed dean for that after I retired from Loma Linda. And I met with the president, and it was all arranged. He was in the US at that time, and I visited with him in his home. But he went back and stepped out of his office and was shot and killed. And they stopped any Americans coming. And so I never was the dean there. But
so tell us the secret to a long and healthy life.
keep active and enjoy what you're doing.
Yeah. You seem very sharp, no cognitive impairment that I can ascertain, yet so many people, even many years younger than you are, have so much decline. What do you think keeps you so spry?
Keep active.
You're fun. Oh, wow. So you got to come back on your 100th birthday, or you can just come back every year if you want until Wayne finally gives you that award for lifestyle medicine. We got to keep you coming back for that. That is for sure. Let's see if there's any other questions. That you say you go to a gym, but what do you do at the gym?
I go through there's 11 machines that supposedly work all the different muscles of the body. And I go through all of those. And then I end up on a treadmill for 20 minutes, where I go 3 miles on the treadmill in 20 minutes. And that's the regular workout I have in Planet Fitness.
Wow. That's
11,
pretty good.
11 strengthening machines and the treadmill.
And I'm guessing you still drive yourself?
Oh, yes. I don't know. I'm recognizing that someday I probably will have to give it up. But when my family rides with me, I ask them to critique my driving. And so far, none of them have felt that I was dangerous.
Nice. So do you think there's any hope for the future?
I'm not sure what you're asking. Are you?
Well, just, I don't know. The world has changed since 1920, hasn't it?
It has tremendously. It's changed in the last 5 years tremendously.
Yeah. Do you worry about?
I have given up on the world ever being much better. I'm looking forward to the second return of our Lord.
Other than Wayne, have any of your other children or grandchildren gone into the field of medicine?
Edwin, our oldest child has his master public health, and his wife also. Our youngest son was trained as a teacher, he and his wife, and they taught overseas for 5 years. But he decided that he wanted to go into something where he could work with his children. They have four children of their own, and they've adopted a son. But he got into agriculture as something that his children could work with him on. And that's been a real blessing for them. They've done very, very well. Two of the children are working on the farm. I want to be farmers. One of them is doing very well in business. One of them is doing aircraft mechanic, electrical mechanic work for airplanes. And one is a professional photographer.
Oh,
They've all done well.
very nice. Do you have any guilty pleasures? Do you ever go off the diet, if you will? Like a piece of chocolate or
It's interesting. I've never drunk milk because I just didn't like it, but I've always put it on cereal, and that for many years was cow's milk. But one of my real weaknesses is ice cream. And I have mostly cut it out, but a few times a year I indulge in some ice cream.
Well, you can make it out of just fruit. There's all kinds of machines now, and there's vegan ice cream and all that stuff, but I think you're entitled. Can you walk unassisted? Do you use a cane, a walker, hearing aids, anything like that?
No, I have glasses.
That's okay. Me too. I just don't wear them. Oh, well, you are just delightful. Thank you so much for spending part of your birthday with me. What do you have planned for the rest of the day?
Well, we're having a dinner, the family here. We're going to
Are you cooking it though? Do you have to make your own birthday dinner?
No, I'm entirely dependent on family for this.
Oh, nice. Do you do anything to improve the health of your community? Because it sounds like you're so interested in public health. Where you are now, are you doing any lectures or?
Have you ever heard of Hans Deal and the CHIP program?
Well, have I heard of Hans Deal? We're very good friends. Yes, I have. Are you a CHIP facilitator?
Yes, we've trained something like 110 in our local community through the CHIP program, and have made quite an impact.
That is fantastic. And well, thank you so much. It's such a pleasure to meet you.
Well, I'm happy to meet you. I first got acquainted with you when you were on McDougall's program 7 years ago. I've gotten a recording of that, and I
had no idea you knew who I was. That's amazing.
And I just got
So do you know Dr. John McDougall?
a bit. He doesn't know me, but I know him.
You got my book. Wow, I'm so honored. Well, if you want to meet him, I'll introduce you. He comes on once a month. I like him very much. He's a wonderful speaker.
Yes, I appreciate him.
Oh, that is so cool.
I guess my first contact with stars was early in my career. I met Nathan Pritikin.
Oh, wow.
He's lectured for me several times and in the past. And then
so you met Pritikin, you met Burkett. Did you happen to meet like Dr. Roy Swank or Dr. Walter Kempner by any chance?
No, well, I think I've met Kempner, but Dean Ornish, I know a bit. And let's see, I've gotten fairly well acquainted with the China study, Dr.
Oh, you
Campbell.
know Dr. T. Colin Campbell. He'll be on June 15th. Yeah, he's wonderful. Do you know Dr. Esselstyn?
Yeah, I've met him. I don't know him well.
Nice. Well, you seem to have had a fascinating life, and I would love personally to read all about it. So get cracking on that autobiography, please.
Well, I don't know whether my time will allow it, but I do think about it occasionally.
Oh, I think you should, because there's just so much for people to learn from you. Well, thank you and happy birthday, Dr. Bill Dysinger.
Thank you very much.
It's so nice to meet you. And Dr. Wayne Dysinger, thank you so much for introducing me to your dad.
Thanks for having us on. It's a great way to celebrate.
I know. Well,
96 years. Yeah.
We should do this every year. This has just been such a treat. And thanks all of you for watching another episode of Chef AJ Live. Please come back tomorrow for